I am Deirdre Toner, she said, and I lead AWS's Analytics Specialist Organization. AWS is really proud to sponsor this year's Data Science Connect. I'm going to talk a few minutes about some trends we see, and then we'll chat with my esteemed stage mates here. So as data scientists, I just want to say, welcome to the decade of data. We've seen a lot of advancements in the last decade. We now have the ability to experiment in ways we've always wanted to. We capture and analyze data at scale like never before. We can now run algorithms at scale that we only read about in school. And unlike the very recent past, experimentation can be done quickly, cheaply, not requiring millions of dollars long-term investment to test a hypothesis. So we now have the freedom to experiment without that career-limiting CapEx hangover. But now organizations are expected to be data-driven. Boards in the C-suite got the message that data is the new oil. So demands on data teams are increasing, and data-related projects are in full swing with a full slate of projects still waiting. In 2020, we now have also learned that there are other factors to consider when prioritizing our projects and our resources. How people think about planning and designing data projects has changed, and it needs to. Sure, you have a roadmap, but on top of all that, you need to be able to handle the unexpected, nimble and agile like never before. How fast can you react to the unexpected? Is it fast enough? These are questions we all have to answer. How do you even know? So I contend that you literally have to design for the unexpected, and we'll explore what that means. We have examples like NASDAQ, who had designed, in their own words, they had designed for the infinite in terms of scale. And they found those principles were timely during the testing during the financial turbulence this year. At our own Amazon.com and companies like DoorDash, they had to be able to scale securely and instantly. Down in the Southeast, Chick-fil-A discovered that, among other things, they did mobile app to engage their customers in new ways now, and they were able to do that really quickly. But very few stories are being watched more closely with more interest than Moderna. And I'm trying to move my slides for you. So traditional drugs must be created factory, then introduced to a patient body, but mRNA drugs tell the patient's bodies how to produce the drugs themselves, sort of like biological software. Moderna's founders recognized that using this mRNA as a drug delivery mechanism would open the door to non-traditional drug development approach. And they've invented proprietary techniques and methods that run on AWS to create mRNA constructs that cells recognize as if they were created in the body. This mRNA drug development approach, combined with the agility, scalability, and security of AWS clouds, is what allows them to experiment rapidly on virtually any mRNA sequence without investing in new technology. So as a result, Moderna was able to deliver the first clinical batch of vaccine candidates against COVID-19 to the National Institutes of Health for phase 1 trial in only 42 days of initial virus sequencing. This timeline would have been impossible even just a few years ago, and without the design principles deployed by Moderna. The Moderna Drug Design Studio is run on AWS compute, storage, analytics, plus IoT for things like robotics and manufacturing and inventory management information. This provides a lot of speed benefits. Amazon Redshifts used to aggregate results from dozens of experiments and share the insights to refine the design and production cycles quickly. Therefore, Moderna can essentially copy and paste its digital manufacturing model onto its partners' facilities for technology transfer and access to additional production capacities when it needs to address global demand. Information sharing also became key to many other related organizations handling various aspects of COVID. AWS built a public data lake where we could make available and share data sets from many organizations with those who could leverage them, like Johns Hopkins and Carnegie Mellon. What's really critical here is that it was possible in just days, leveraging modern architecture approaches and services. But outside of COVID itself, there are really other implications for virtually every industry. McKinsey's already published a couple of studies on the impact in advanced analytics on our times in different industries. First, organizations who are early adopters of AI are more profitable than their peers who don't. Bam. This also varies by industry. Healthcare, life sciences, and financial services see the largest advantages. Additionally, inside these industries who recognize that advanced analytics can help them, we see the COVID-19 crisis has put a spotlight on the power and potential of analytics and artificial intelligence. We've heard from leaders across industries and geographies about the many ways analytics enable them to be more effectively handle the new challenges presented in these unprecedented times, from supporting and protecting workers to engaging increasingly digital customers and managing fragile supply chains. My widely used analytics techniques are machine learning, and these rely on the principle that patterns and behaviors from the past will likely repeat in the future. The algorithmic models expose these patterns and data and draw on them to predict what will happen, like whether a customer will cancel service or recommend what the business should do. For example, which offer will most likely change a customer's mind. This was effective until the pandemic transformed the way we live and work, and many of these models were broken. So previously business-critical models have been temporarily benched due to changing priorities during COVID lockdowns. This was the case of most banks across one European country as they redirected their outbound sales reps from branches and call centers to offer support to the customers, helping them make online banking or secure emergency loans. And energy companies struggle with trading decisions when crude oil prices cross into negative numbers because the data scientists built existing models on the assumptions that the barrel prices would never fall below zero. Some patterns of data captured during COVID-19 crisis, for example, the unusually high demand for hygiene products, will become irrelevant. They won't last. But new lasting patterns, such as the consumer spending on digital channels, will emerge, which might invalidate or reduce the predictive power of the pre-COVID-19 data and models as well. Telecom companies struggle to keep up with dramatically higher broadband demand, while oil and gas companies watch prices shrivel as automobiles and airplanes set idle. CPG companies race to ramp up production of essentials such as hygiene products, and clothing retailers shut down. So McKesson goes on to counsel that business leaders charged with sourcing this data, whether a business head, chief data officer, or other executive, should expand their sources and approaches in a few key ways that we won't go into here. But this needs to be addressed very, very quickly. And it's an opportunity for organizations to evaluate how they design the data pipeline and how they mobilize their resources to be as agile as possible on a whole new scale. This is what designing for the unexpected looks like. Now, in terms of practical ways to implement this very quickly, we see industry giving themselves advantage in a couple of ways. Like most things, you need to deal with both the technology plus the people and processes. From a technology perspective, the big trend we saw taking hold and now accelerating even more rapidly is the concept of a lakehouse, which provide the benefit of access to both structured and unstructured data. To realize the value of data and take advantage of the benefits of embracing these trends we just covered, customers are increasingly moving to this lakehouse architecture where a cloud data warehouse lives inside the greater architecture that includes a data lake. This means you get your relatively static business data optimized in the lake data warehouse with all the benefits of a cloud data lake to run complex analytic queries against petabytes of structured data. Amazon Redshift is the only data warehouse that extends your queries to your Amazon S3 data lake without moving or transforming data. With Redshift Spectrum, you can query open file formats you already use. This gives you the flexibility to store highly structured, frequently accessed data in Redshift, as well as keep exabytes of structured and unstructured data in S3 and query seamlessly across both to provide unique insights that you would not be able to gain by querying independent data sets. This is the best of both worlds. What about machine learning, you ask? Because we know that orgs are expanding the use of ML. So this is the really key part. So customers need an easy way to get the results from those Redshift queries back into S3 in an open format that can be used by other services like machine learning. We do this by exporting for you the results of the queries into your data lakes in Parquet so that you can analyze the data with other analytics services like SageMaker, Athena, and EMR. This ability to take data from the data lake to the data warehouse and back to the data lake is what we call a lakehouse architecture. Of course, you also get the benefit of being part of the AWS Analytics ecosystem, where there are a host of other services and capabilities that we allow you to benefit from with fundamentals like security, access control, and more. But it's not just about the technology, as I said. You must also address the people and process aspects. In one consumer products company, their data scientists told us that they would build a model, but it would sit in the queue for their governance committee with a 9-month-long backlog. Think about 9 months ago. What was our world like then? You can't run a business that way anymore. So what we see now is that companies need a data marketplace to deal with the people and process aspects of their data. The reduced cost of experimentation is perhaps the most important component of achieving this agile state where you can design for the unexpected. This is achieved through what we call the modern data community, where we push agility to the edge of the organization where it's closest to the business. In the past, governance, data quality, infrastructure, and security were all managed by one central organization that generally lived in IT. While this ensured consistent adherence to policies, it created a bottleneck for this innovation and the availability of information. Forbes recently published an article said, by making 10% more data accessible, typically a Fortune 1000 company will see a $65 million increase in net income. Given the enormous economic benefit that data can bring to a company, this challenge that we see around people process is one that must be solved. So to support this agility inside of an organization, we need to create a decentralized model for managing these assets. Based on our own experience with Amazon Marketplace, where we have thousands of developers and thousands of data sources using over 100 petabytes of data to support over 1 million analytic jobs per day, the AWS team is working with customers on best practices around creating a modern data marketplace architected to run a decentralized environment where data can be discovered transparently and used with established rules, security, and commitments from the owners of the data. This allows a company to operate in both an agile and secure way. We could spend an hour on this topic alone in different roles, but I will leave you with just the high-level concepts. The market creates a decentralized environment where users can search and discover data sets, request access to data, publish data, create new data pipelines, understand the data quality and lineage of diverse data sets. This creates the agile environment that allows companies to move at the speed of business with the right tools for the right job while still adhering to data security rules and the regulatory considerations, reducing the risk of having their precious data assets lost in the sweep of information. So I hope that was helpful. We heard some interesting use cases and approaches to deal with the latest trends and give the organizations a competitive edge. But all use cases for data are not necessarily created equal in my mind. And growing up as a Navy brat, there's one that is very near and dear to my heart. It's being addressed by the good folks at Rally Point in conjunction with Dr. Matt Nock of Harvard. Rally Point's a military online network with $1.8 million members who post about military life. They saw anecdotal information about suicide. They partnered with a psychology chair at Harvard to understand the data, and they found they could be more deliberate in the way that they address this data and allowed experts to take action. So I'm humbled to introduce two very accomplished, dedicated individuals to share the story of using technology for a noble purpose and save the lives of our veterans. First, we have David Gowell, who's a U.S. Army veteran turned entrepreneur, who's now the CEO of Rally Point, the world's largest online military network. He's a graduate of West Point of the U.S. Army Ranger School. He then served 2 tours in Europe, during which he was deployed in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom as an Army platoon leader. Dave's last active duty Army position was serving as assistant professor of military leadership at MIT. This is where he found the value of social media, which led to his co-founding consulting firm to help people leverage social media tools more professionally. He authored a book on the topic. Dave is on a board of advisor to Vets in Tech and a member of the Leadership Council for the Rosalind Carter Institute for Caregiving. So welcome, Dave.
Thank you, Deirdre. Good to be here.
Also joining us is Dr. Matthew Nock, who's the Ed Pierce Professor and Chair of the Department of Psychology at Harvard University. Professor Nock received his PhD in psychology from Yale and completed his clinical internship at Bellevue Hospital and the New York University Child Study Center. Dr. Nock's research is aimed at advancing the understanding of why people behave in ways that are harmful to themselves, with an emphasis on suicide and other forms of self-harm. This work is funded by grants for U.S. National Institutes of Health, U.S. Department of Defense, U.S. Army, and private foundations. It's published over 250 scientific papers. It's been recognized with the receipt of numerous career awards, and in 2011, he received a MacArthur Fellowship, which is known as the Genius Grant. At Harvard, Professor Nock teaches courses on statistics, research methods, self-destructive behaviors, developmental psychopathology, wow, that was a mouthful, and cultural diversity, for which he's received teaching and mentoring awards. So welcome, Dr. Nock.
Thank you, Deirdre. Thanks for having us.
We're so excited to hear your story today. Let me ask a couple of questions, starting for Dave. What is Rally Point today, and what's your vision and what unique data are created on your platform?
Certainly. So thank you again, Deirdre, for having us here. The idea of Rally Point is fairly simple. It's the military's online network. And the experience that our members feel on the site is kind of a mashup of a LinkedIn, a Facebook, and a Quora. The experience is one that's social, professional, and informational, as you know, that's basically the military life. We work hard together, we deploy together, we live in the same bases around the world. And that social and professionalism often it bleeds into each side of our lives, and for that reason, Rally Point provides an experience that just isn't well suited on other civilian sites. our jargon in the military, the acronyms, career progression, and even the challenges, as we'll talk about here today, have a lot of uniqueness to them. And so that's why Rally Point exists. So we are up to 1.8 million members now. Those members are on every base worldwide. About 43% of our members are still in uniform serving, 46% are veterans, and about 11% are civilian supporters. And those civilian supporters range from recruits who are thinking about joining the military, asking our members questions, to spouses and other military family members, as well as caregivers, survivors, and a lot of civilian recruiters join our site to hire our members. So that experience and that population basically allows us to pursue the vision to be the platform to digitally connect the military to enable a lifetime of support. We are very interested in making sure that our audience, who is one that, I'm a veteran myself, my brother's still active duty. It's an audience that I think is hard to serve because of the complexities of military service, transition, and then life after serving. And so the way that we feel that we can best do that is through very thoughtful and deliberate and protected use of our data. And that unique data set is the combination of what people are saying as it relates to the military background. We have lots of information about what our members want. And historically, in fact, one of the things that really brought Dr. Knock and I together early on was the way that our members interact. They provide a lot of digital mentorship, helping each other through all these key elements of life, from joining to serving to transitioning and ultimately leading a successful life as a veteran. So that peer-to-peer connectivity generates lots of pain points. So we know when people are struggling and where they are in their career. It also generates a lot of solutions that our members can use online, where they can reach out to someone who's helped someone else or has been helped and ask them to get offline, maybe with things that they might not want to share online. And our focus is really to try to help use these data that are being created by our members to help them get whatever they're looking for. So that, in a nutshell, is who we are and what we're up to.
Great. And some of you might see a poll pop up, so feel free to participate. It's just interesting information that we can share. So I understand from our conversations that suicide is a big problem. What aspect of suicide are you working on right now, and what barriers do you face?
It's a great question. What we see with suicide is that many people who die by suicide likely die from different causes. Someone might have a medical condition, they might be bipolar with a long history of challenges that they might have multiple attempts before then. And other people might, unfortunately, have had a terrible day, might have access to lethal means, and might have a substance use issue. And because of the complexity of what is suicide, we've gone to our data and said, okay, where do we think we can help? And the idea of our members coming to our site, knowing that by being on Rally Point, you can't create a private group. That's something that we've learned from the mistakes of other sites. We don't allow our members to create private groups. So when they speak on Rally Point, they know that they are speaking to a large group of individuals that have shared experiences, but that it is a public post. When those public posts are made, historically, our members would jump in. Often they do it very quickly, but there's a varying degree of expertise among our members who might have the best intentions to try to help someone who's showing signs of suicide risk, but they might not have the training or the experience to say or do the right things to help them. So that is the area where we see the most logical and easiest way to make an impact. It's by allowing our predictive models to look at what people are saying publicly and then to immediately fire an alert in less than a second when we identify people saying things at risk. That alert right now goes to humans on our team who then deliver via digital means the right types of interventions to help our members. So that's where we are today and how we're helping our members as we speak.
Wow. So how did you come to work with Harvard on this problem?
So initially, Rally Point was founded more as a professional platform for the military, recognizing that if you're serving in the military, we're not taught to network. You don't try to go and hang out with the general at the base down the street. Like, that's not cool. There's a chain of command, you're siloed, and you do what you're told. And at the same time, we recognize that the idea to provide something like a LinkedIn was very valuable. And so we started off providing that. Very quickly, we learned from our members that they didn't just want to be active duty, guard, and reserve on our site, but they also wanted to have the Rally Point access when they're veterans. They wanted their families, their survivors, their caregivers to have access as well. And so it was as the population grew and we noticed all different types of conversations that were not focused on getting a job when you transition, but on being successful in your job as a service member or a family member or someone around them. That's where we started to see more and more people building trust and sharing very raw things. That was concerning for us. We didn't know what to do. And so we started to engage our network. Very fortunate being in the Boston area. There's a lot of medical professionals and experts in the space. And it was a mutual colleague from Mass General Hospital that connected Dr. Knock and I. And we got to start talking. We realized that the work that he was doing dovetailed very nicely to what we wanted to do and would actually give us the comfort to do it, knowing that we had the right experts helping us take care of our members so we do no harm.
Right. So Matt, can you tell us about your research focus and why this is important to you?
Sure. So our research in a nutshell is focused on advancing the understanding, prediction, and prevention of suicide. And so we used, our team, like other research groups, use a range of different methods to try and make advances in each of these areas. So we do large-scale epidemiological surveys, laboratory-based studies, hospital-based studies, and so on. The reason we're interested in this problem is because of how big of a problem it's been for so long. So suicide is one of the leading causes of death in the US and has been for a long time. And it's the second leading cause of death among those ages 15 to 34. So it disproportionately affects our young people. And whereas the mortality rate for many leading causes of death, cancer, tuberculosis, pneumonia, has dropped precipitously over the past 100 years, the suicide rate hasn't really changed. And it's the same now as it was 100 years ago. So we haven't used advances in technology, research, policy to make change. And so we want to do that. So it's been a longstanding, interesting philosophical and scientific problem, but much more importantly, to me, it's a devastating human problem. I, like many people probably in this meeting, have had family, friends, colleagues struggle with suicidal thoughts and behaviors. And so, we want to use advances in technology and research to try and do something about that.
Yeah, and we had a poll question on that topic, and I think we can see that a lot of people can relate to that experience. So how is the work you're doing with Rally Point different from other work you do in this field? And what are the salient differences between military suicide risk and that of the risk for the rest of us? Yeah,
good question. The risk and protective factors for suicide among military service members and veterans are actually not so dissimilar to what we see in civilians. 90 to 95% of people who die by suicide have a diagnosable mental disorder. Stressors, lack of social support, lack of effective treatment contribute similarly in military service members and veterans and civilians. What's different about this work is the ability to get out into the general population and find people at risk. So about half of people who die by suicide came to see a doctor in the month before they died. So a lot of the work we're doing is in hospitals, trying to figure out, can we use machine learning applied to electronic health records to find which of those people are at risk? Can we follow patients we know are having suicidal thoughts with smartphones and wearable biosensors to better find out who's at risk and when? But the other half of people don't come into the hospital and don't identify themselves. And that's why the work on Rally Point is so important. About 2/3 of people who die by suicide tell someone before they kill themselves that they're thinking of suicide. But most people don't know what to do. They don't know how to respond. On Rally Point, what we're doing is applying machine learning algorithms to building classifiers to find people who are at risk for suicide, who are talking about suicide or using words, using language that we know to be indicative of having suicidal thoughts. And we're developing interventions that can reach out to them in real time, connect them with others, and intervene in other ways. And this work is really, really scalable. If you have an online network of people, we can, again, find them in real time, intervene in real time, which is really exciting.
Great. So Dave, what's next for Rally Point?
Well, this work that we're doing is of the paramount importance to us. So we're very diligently and carefully moving forward to improve our models, to increase our interventions, and to really leverage that data that is entrusted to us by our members to do what they want us to in a manner that allows us to partner with many great organizations. So one reason we're thrilled to talk to you today and for our session tomorrow is because we are actively looking at partners who can bring to bear the best technology and methods to work with us to ultimately do as much as we can around those kind of 4 key areas for the military. And that's joining the military, that's serving and having a high degree of readiness, it's transitioning out of the military, which I've come to learn is a higher risk factor for suicide 365 days after transition, and then leading a successful life afterwards. So we have been awarded an Air Force contract and 2 additional contract vehicles that allow us to do this work, but it also allows us to expand the work that we're doing to go upstream. We don't just want to do the diving catches to save people who are in the throes of having cries for help on our site. We want to be able to identify all those other things, the hundreds of millions of impressions on our member content. There's 6.3 million posts share a lot, but the interactions with that content will allow us to connect our members to resources, programs, and people well upstream from suicide while they're still serving, while they are, perhaps before they've gotten to that point of having something that impacts their resilience. And so that very broad vision, that very broad opportunity is upon us now. And so actively working with partners to use data in a very ethical and thoughtful way that supports our members while they are on the design team with us is the plan for the foreseeable future.
So that's an exciting opportunity with a lot of data. How do you handle privacy concerns?
So a lot of the privacy protections we put in place have to do with, first of all, structuring the site. Obviously, when you join Rally Point, you put in information. We make sure that anything that you share is going to be publicly shared. So given that we are the military and some people handle sensitive information, we also have a cadre of moderators who are constantly looking for people who might share things that they shouldn't. So for example, sometimes we get junior soldiers who come on and say, hey, when's the deployment cycle for this unit? And then quickly a retired NCO will jump on and say, yeah, why don't we also put the nuclear launch codes in here too? And so the nature of our site facilitates the notion of not only privacy for important military information, but also for our members. And so from our privacy policy to before we launched a lot of the work that we're doing, we asked our members and we say, what do you want us to do with technology? What do you think we should do with our technology? And between the advisory council that we have our member administrators on, and just the way that we're able to listen to our members through what they're saying, that's how we're trying to make sure we don't make the mistakes that others have had in the past and get everyone from the public sector, private sector partners, and our members included on building something that ultimately is going to be really a shared asset for us all.
Great. So back to Matt, how has the role of data and machine learning changed as it relates to suicide research in the last decade?
It's changed dramatically. I mean, the field looks totally different now in many places than it did a decade ago. For suicide, this is absolutely the case. If you think about suicide as a problem, it is a leading cause of death, but it's low base rate. It doesn't occur a lot in any one given time and place. We don't know when it's going to occur. It's private. It's stigmatized, so people aren't talking a lot about it publicly. It's temporally dynamic. The risk is changing hour to hour. And like violence, it's not predicted by any one factor. There's no silver bullet. There's no one factor that's going to predict it. It's predicted by the combination of lots of different factors that change dramatically themselves over time. And so the availability of digital data collected in an ongoing way and the increased computing power we have is dramatically changing how we're doing business, so to speak, how we're finding people at risk and the potential to know when they're at risk and to intervene in real time. We just haven't been able to do that ever before in history.
Wow. And so where do you think will make the greatest advancements in combating suicide in the next decade?
I think doing the things we were just talking about. So I think the traditional model that we've been using for, in many ways, thousands of years of talking to people and seeing, asking them if they're depressed, if they're thinking about suicide, our current, best practice is to wait for someone to come find us and tell us that they're thinking about suicide and then talk to them and then meet with them once a week and talk therapy and try and effectively talk them out of being suicidal. It's the best we've had, but it just isn't working. The suicide rate isn't changing. And so where we're headed, I think, again, with advances in electronic health record data, social media data from platforms like Rally Point, getting these data in real time and having models that can iteratively tell us the person's risk and tailor interventions to the person. And in the same way, many platforms, many companies are doing for advertising purposes, for sales purposes, if we use a lot of these same technologies and approaches for mental health purposes, find people at risk and help get them treatments tailored to their needs when they need them, I think this can dramatically change the game of how we do not just suicide prediction and prevention, but mental health understanding and prediction and prevention more broadly.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I can see some comments in the session chat of lots of folks sharing some stories. So I think this is a cause that's near and dear to everyone's heart, and most people know someone who's affected. So thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate it. I know that there's another session. When is your other session?
I think it's tomorrow at 11:30 a.m.
I'm sure a lot of folks will be interested in joining and tuning in. But thank you for joining us today. Enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.